Welcome, everyone, to the town budget hearing. I'd like to start the meeting by calling on Mr. Ken Lenz to lead us in the pledge.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Good. You want me to do this now?
What's that?
We'll do this now?
Sure.
Yeah, okay. Chris, the mic's on? Everything's good, thank you. All right, good evening. My name's Jim Leahy, on the Board of Finance here in Orange. For those watching at home, for now or in the future, there is a YouTube link that's tied to that button. This is on the Town of Orange webpage, the homepage. It's a useful button. We've been using it creatively over the last couple of years since we had it installed. And we're using it tonight so people could easily access the YouTube link, and then you might be able to copy the YouTube link. And if someone you know wants the YouTube link, just contact John Cifarelli at the Department of Finance and Administration, and they can get that to you. Okay. So Kevin, I think it goes back to you.
Okay. Well, you already briefed everyone on this. This is going
But
to be
not in the audience of OGA.
That's true. Our agenda for this evening, I'm not going to read every line, but you can see that's going to be how we're going to proceed. And number 12 is questions and answers, so anyone from the public, even though I understand from the town posted agenda, that wasn't listed. So I want to make sure everyone knows there will be a question and answer session, and anyone can speak at that time. So our key contributors to this budget this year, first off, First Selectman Jim Zioli, John Cifarelli, our Finance Director, Audrey Gear, who's next to him down there, Deb Satonic's next to Audrey, she's our Recording Secretary, the Orange Board of Education, Orange Board of Education Finance Committee, the Amity Board of Education, the Amity Finance Committee, town department heads, and our board, who I'll introduce in a moment. And I know Pat Romano's here. She was an important part of this board in the past. So was PJ Shanley. We have two new members, Ajit Jain, who is not here this evening, and Kevin McDebola, who I'd like to also point out with the volunteers in this town, which we talk about later in the budget, is also the Director of Finance for the City of Meriden. So while we lost two good people, we gained two good people. So, and then next to Kevin is Kevin Moffitt, and I'm Kevin Houlihan. Obviously, everyone knows Mr. Leahy. Our development process started right after the last budget was passed. We established budget guidelines based on economic conditions, revenue projections, affordability of taxpayers. As we already stated, the Amity develops their budget, Orange Board of Ed develops their budget. Our town departments heads develop their budgets, which are reviewed by John and the First Selectman, Mr. Zioli. We review all three budgets. We meet regularly. We have a lot of fun, and finalize a total town operating budget. This budget is based on prioritization of needs, affordability, ongoing pandemic realities, and our current inflationary environment. This budget was also unanimously approved by this board. And take it away, sir.
Yeah, we've
You
used
love
this slide, but for those who haven't seen it in the past, we see our having two responsibilities here in the Orange Board of Finance. The first is, it's kind of a balancing act between various things of needs on the left-hand side, and on the right-hand side, residential and commercial paying town taxes. As you can also see on the right-hand side, that's not only a majority, but a significant majority, nearly 92% of our supporting the costs of operation are the town taxes. So that's what it means. So whether it's your request for services, infrastructure, the roads, whatever, public safety, community and health, the schools, all right, and adapting to the state budget cuts and assigned costs where they lie. The second responsibility, I get asked about this a lot, like it's some secret. I always have ended up saying it's just like what you would do at home. You just look at everything that you're spending and you say, can we do it a better way? So I use this graphic of Sherlock Holmes or something like that, looking at money as an indication of that thought, all right, which oftentimes we use the phrase doing more with less. But I don't think it's any more complicated, really, than what we try to do in our home environments as well. So that's what we do, our two responsibilities. Another thing we show every year, and it's an important one, compound interest. You know, Einstein called it the eighth wonder of the world. And when you look at a graph, when you see just over a 10-year period, what happens when you increase something 1%, this could be money you've invested, it could be costs, right? It's just a mathematical fact that over a 10-year period, if you happen to do 1%, you add a certain number, 110.5. And if you have 4% a year, the gap widens. And if it's higher than that, the gap widens even more. So we kind of keep this in mind, again, looking at that information with that kind of a doing more with less kind of eye. Now, one of the things we've been able to do is boost up our credit rating to AAA. And I remember going to a few meetings and reading a few factors, and these are the factors that they said that makes it rate the town of Orange AAA. Conservative fiscal policies, a view of how you do economic development, having a solid fund balance, community involvement, and here I'd like to alert you to a fine, by the way, in my judgment. I don't blow smoke often in life, but the last paragraph on page 3 or your second page of the document that you have there, when John wrote and Audrey wrote, I want to acknowledge the many committed professionals who selflessly serve on the boards and commissions without compensation. It's the kind of public spirit that makes Orange a unique and special community in which to live. I mean, as we approach our 200th year. I think that's really a fundamental thing, whether you're on the Board of Finance, the Board of Education, the Amity Board of Education, or whatever you're doing. You're contributing on a voluntary basis, no compensation, to try to do what's best for your home team, the town of Orange. And I want to make sure that if you're new to Orange, if you're watching on OGAT, that this is a very important part of this community, item 4, community involvement. Open communication, having things on OGAT. All right, we do what we say we're going to do, kind of an important thing. We fully fund the expenditures, whatever the actuary says we got to put in the budget, that's what we do. And what's your collection of tax rates? And it's these things in the bottom, what we used to call kicker box. Thank you, Chris. That you do all of that well, what does it really mean? And I think intrinsically it means that you have decreased bond rates, which means we pay less in terms of the future for borrowing, whether it be the town or even Amity. Because when Amity goes to borrow, they look at the towns that support it, and we're 50% of that. So these are the factors that lead you to getting the credit rating that's, we think, very valuable. Okay, in terms of the bottom line up front, what we have here this year, and it came a pretty good surprise to us actually in the early part of March, we had an increase in revenue, the upper right, and I don't know how well in the audience you can read this, so I'll just kind of walk you through where the arrow is. There's been an increase of 5.44% in our net grant list. This is what brings in the money for towns. And I'm going to show you details on where that is on the next slide. This is an unheard of circumstance, all right? Kevin, I don't think I've ever heard of this in a non-reval year.
No,
right?
no, but I just interject. It's a 5.4 increase in grand list, but not revenue, because there's so many other components to the budget on the revenue side. So I don't want anybody to get the idea that our revenue stream
It's
went
not
up.
a direct.
Right.
You can't subtract the cost from that to
No.
get to the bottom right. Yep. Okay, thank you. Good edit. And on the spending side, lower left, you can see where the number is. I'll just read it, but it'll come up a number of times in the presentation. That where we are at right now is $78,367,690, which is a 2.96% increase. So all the presentations you're going to hear tonight add up to that particular number. As a result of the increase in revenue being so historically unique, all right, what we're here proposing is a 1.5% decrease in the taxes in the town. All right, that's what it adds up to. All right, and we'll show you that detail. Okay? So we mentioned the net grand list, and it has 3 major segments. On the left-hand side, you see in the yellow real estate, that's the largest one, if you can see the numbers out there, all right? $1.837 billion, okay? Business personal property is $147 million, that's in fiscal year last, all right? And motor vehicle is the 148 next to it. Now, you can see as you shift to the column next to that, which is fiscal year 21, that's the, Mark Brancese, he does this in October of 21, takes a while to get the numbers in, all right? And you can see it's gone up. What was incredibly surprising to me, besides the overall number of 5.44, is the grand list of the real estate only went up 0.61, and that's the biggest component of the thing. Now, that, as you'll see, he said that this overall change is the most unusual thing I've seen in my 40 years. He mentioned that to me this morning, and so I figured I'd use it. Now, the second one, personal property, as you can see, it goes from 147 to 208. And while it's a smaller junior partner compared to the real estate, that dramatic increase is a 41.29% increase in business personal property. Okay? And the third one is motor vehicle. And that went from 148 to 191. Next slide, I'll tell you a little bit more on what drove those components. And that went up 43 million, or 29.63. So these two numbers here and the right-hand side are very unique and typically will not be reoccurring again, I don't believe. So this grand list increase is highly positive, all right. Yet it's very uncommon, all right. So let me just tell you a little bit more about that grand list. Over on the right in the column, the way I took notes from interviewing the people that put these numbers together is they said, yeah, it's a solid year, 0.61 on the real estate, but it's not spectacular. All right, we've had better in the past, but it was good. And the item 2, the business personal property, the vast majority of that increase came from UI. All right, and we'll talk about that a little bit more later. But one of the things that had happened last year, I don't know how much people will recall, John, correct me on this, but I think UI had kind of a little bit of a dip. And there were some proactive actions taken by leadership in town that they can tell you about, where the CEO came into the office at Town Hall and they had a discussion. And all I'm saying is that I know that the facts say that $61 million more in personal property, and the vast majority of it came from UI. John, is that a fair statement? All right, thank you. Third and final is motor vehicle. One of the things you want to see in the kicker box that's on the bottom of the page there, that real estate and personal property, they use the town mill rate, whatever that turns out to be, and we have a number, right? That's what you use to tax that. It's higher than what the proposed state law is to tax motor vehicles using a flat 29 mill rate. Now, it's kind of like they're robbing Peter to pay Paul, because from the way I understand it, and John, I'd like you to weigh in, you can't tax higher than 29 mils, but they give you a reimbursement to the town that's, what, 700,000?
700,000.
John, please elaborate.
Proposal in Hartford right now from the governor was to tax all motor vehicles at 29 mils, whether you're in Orange, New Haven, Hartford, whatever, but then to give the cities and towns back the money from the state for the difference between the 29 mils and the 33.25, whatever our mill rate was last year, what would be $700,000. But there are two other proposals right now in Hartford, and I'm not sure which one is going to pass, if any of them, at this time.
Okay.
But if they don't pass anything, and we know about it early enough, our motor vehicles will be taxed at our mill rate, and we won't have a $700,000 hole.
Right. Right.
Okay. In any event, what's causing that increase? Just like the business personal property, what was the comment? The comment there is twofold. First of all, when I interviewed Mark Brancese, he told me there's two segments of the motor vehicle. One is new vehicles. That would be new vehicles, not necessarily a 2022 vehicle, but a new one on the list. It could be an older vehicle, right? And the second one, and that is a big factor. And the second factor is, and I think we all know this, the value of the cars, the used car market, has significantly gone up. And so as a result of that, that's what the number turns out to be, and that's how come you have a 29% increase compared to the prior year, which lands us back to the 5.44. All right, so that's a little bit of the inside baseball on the math, okay? All right, considerations. Kevin, I think this is you.
Okay, the factors we were considering, among many others, impacting the residents is, number one is always wage increases, our union contracts, whether they be with the boards of education, the police departments, public works. So that's one of our first ones. Safety and security, which gets back to basically our police department, the growth of the town. You know, we have, obviously, anybody who drives Marshall Road knows we have several issues with the police and fire department up at the hotel up there. So we're trying to fund those increases for the needs there. Medical insurance, fortunately, this year, we were lucky and didn't have an increase. But anybody in private practice knows that that's always been a large, you know, probably, I know my office is about 20% increase this year. The town, we had a slight decrease, so we were lucky in that fact. Then we get to the next two, kind of go hand in hand, the increase in gasoline. Everyone knows it's more expensive to get to work these days, and operate our town, and home heating costs go hand in hand with the heating your home, which we probably may or may not see a decrease by the fall. That'll continue to impact people, but with our, fortunately, Jim and John, I think we've locked in at a lower rate for our public works in the school system, so we dodged a bullet on that so far. And finally, inflation, and as everyone knows, last week they reported the CPI is 8.5%. Hopefully it kind of stabilizes and does not continue to increase, but we don't know where we're heading there at the moment, but it's not transitory. It's probably going to stick around for a little while.
All right, so that's our view on what we see both affecting the town of Orange taxpayers, but somewhat overlapping with what we see as we putting together budgets, because we're both, right, we're both taxpayers and, you know, the people assessing these things. Okay, in terms of the budget summary, it is John and Audrey put together this chart. It's a pie chart. It's in your document there. I think it's a color shot as well. As you can see, on the lower left is the Amity slice at 33.9%, the Orange Education slice, 28.94%, and the rest is various components of the town, from town services and debt service up there at 5.18%, all the way around to employee benefits is 11.08% of the overall budget. All right, so this is this is a summary slide of what's in the document that you have. So too, on the revenue side, there's the property taxes of almost 91.99, almost 92% of the overall. All right, and then you can see where we get other things that have come in or what we plan to have in the budget. Yes.
There are plenty of chairs up front here too. Want to sit?
Just come around the side. We can take 30 seconds to make sure you're comfortable, and we can continue on.
Come on, Rick, while we're taking a break.
Front row, as they say in the movie, right? Okay, so these are the components that make up your the proposed budget that we have tonight. In terms of actual numbers, I know a lot of people like the graph. Some people like to get to see the numbers. These are the numbers. As you can see with the little arrow over there, the total budget went from $76,114,029 to $78,367,690. That's the 2.96% increase that we had talked about earlier. And then when you look at the components, you can see the town budget, you can see the amounts, 26 million odd, 25 million odd, and then it goes to 25,690. You can see the increase is 341,826, okay? In terms of debt and capital, this one actually went down, all right? It went down by 101,000, went down by 2.88%. That's favorable, okay? Thirdly is the Orange Public Schools, a little over 3%, 674,000 in terms of the increase, 444. And then Amity, you have to look at Amity a couple of ways, because their budget went up 3.99, but then there's the factors that regularly every year, two factors that then contribute to where it goes, and it has to do with your share of the population. Our share this year went up, even though our numbers went down, our share went up, and then how much money they get from revenue from other sources, which this year also went down compared to last year. So all the towns had these two factors. So what you have here is an increase of 3.99, but the impact to Orange is different than that percentage point, all right? So I just wanted to explain briefly why the number for the increase and why the number of the impact are different. And the amount, as you can see there, is $1,339,111. So again, the overall, to clean up this section, 2.99% increase, all right? And that translates to $2,253,661. It's the data, all right? And that's the, summarizing what's all in the budget books here. Okay, so we're going to take a small break, and Vince, you're going to come up, and we're going to shift to your presentation, right?
Thanks, Jim.
Yeah, it's a good time to make that shift, Jim. Good idea. I don't know if there's another chair. Tell you what, Vince, let me do this. Let me go in front of you with this chair so that I can get more.
How have you been? Good.
Reasonably good? Thank you.
All set? Mr. Rulon, we're all set? Good?
By the way, when we get to that section, or if you want to come up now, if you want to do the Q&A sign-in, just need your name and your address, and you can come up at any time during the slide, while we're going through the slides to sign up.
So, good evening.
Welcome.
Everyone here in the audience and everyone at home. I'm going to be springboarding a lot of things that Mr. Leahy said. One is our board members. As Mr. Leahy shared, there's a lot of people that support the board, but also support the budget, and a lot of time and effort go into that. With your permission, Mr. Holohan, I'd like to introduce my board members that are in attendance, if that's okay with you.
Absolutely. They work hard.
We have Mr. Bill Kraut, our board chair here. We have Mrs. Hadlock. I saw Mr. Zyman somewhere. Mr. Zyman's there. Ms. James, Mr. Vitale, Ms. Rodriguez. But I want to thank all the board members. And I'm glad that Mr. Leahy mentioned this, is that for not everyone, but a lot of the taxpayers believe this is a paid positions, and they're not. And so a lot of time and effort is put into this. And so again, thank you all for doing that and being here. This is a letter when you get a moment to read either on our website or on any pamphlets. You're going to hear a theme. It was mentioned briefly. And the theme that I cannot help resonate with me is about the pandemic. And so I'm going to be going back and forth and mentioning that. But again, keeping our fiscal responsibility to all of you as taxpayers. Echoing the thought that Mr. Leahy said is, our mission statement. This is read before every board meeting, but we highlight the word "we." And I think more than ever in the pandemic, no matter if you were elected official that supported the school system, parents, but our staff, we could have done it with all of us together, working together to be here today. I believe Mr. Julian shared about this process. As soon as school starts, the budget starts. I think many people don't know that. Again, the budget is not even over yet. We still have the referendum to go. But this is just a long process in which a lot of time and effort is put into it. So district highlights. I think for all of you, we've gone through some challenges these past 2 years. And when I say highlight of in-person learning, like some people say, well, why would you put that in there, Vince? Because you've been in person. Again, that didn't happen right away. March 13th, 2 years ago, every school in the state of Connecticut, all across the country, were saying, go home. If it wasn't because of our staff, and especially, I have to say all staff, but at that moment, the teachers jumping up and stepping up, teaching from home in order for our kids to learn, deserves an awful lot of credit for them. It was not an easy task. I think it's more challenging for elementary students. And we were one of many districts, but we were able to ready and get start of in-person learning that following year. And that's beyond of what people were facing personally at home. No matter if they've had loved ones that happened to pass away or they were sick themselves or any fears that they were here and they supported our community. So again, I want to thank you, and that was a huge highlight for our community to be that and keep on striving. With that is safe environments, and because of use of grants, we were able to do that. Many of you may know that some school districts, because staff, they got sick. Of course, at that time, they had to stay home for 10 days. We needed staff. We jumped ahead. We hired district substitutes in order for our kids to still come to school. When I was sitting with the team and getting ready for that, we thought about our bus drivers. Many districts, because they didn't have bus drivers, couldn't even bring kids. They had to close the schools down. So this is where I get myself in trouble, where I forget mentioning certain people. But again, it took the whole entire community to perform what we performed here. As we continue, we will ensure safe and healthy environments. We want to engage and empower students, and of course, strength teaching and learning. We go over this to show, I go back to when I first got hired. I remember one of the exercises I had to do during the process is I was giving, and I think they did an analysis that, like in a couple years, we're only going to have 900 students in Orange. We don't have 900 students in Orange. It keeps on climbing. What the Board of Finance has asked us to do is always, and again, I apologize, the laser doesn't hit because it's on a screen versus on a different, so I can't show you, but I'll just reach over here. No matter where we start, you always see an increase by the time we end. Now, the only time that you see a start or see a decrease, and again, probably all of you noted it, that was in 20 and 21 year. Why do you think that is? Because some families decided to keep their kids home, which they had every right to do. If they want to homeschool because of concerns of their safety, they had every right to do that. But again, it jumps right back up. You see a lot of pie charts. Mr. Leahy showed one. Salary and benefits will always be there as an increase. Contractual obligations. They talked about the transportation of gas, utilities. In order to support our schools, we're looking at hiring more staff. Continuing with district permanent substitutes in case teachers continue to get sick. We want to make sure we support our schools and make sure students have faculty and staff in front of them. Decreases you'll see is the special education tuition and transportation. A board member pointed out to me that, hey, Vince, we don't want anyone to think that we are decreasing the budget in special ed and not supporting our services. That is not the case. Depending on the students that we receive, there's something called an IEP, an individualized education plan. If we're not able to have something called a least restrictive environment in our schools, we have to outplace those students. So that costs tuition for that students. That's our obligation for anyone who lives here, but it also costs transportation. And so depending on if we create a system where a child could return or they actually are transitioning to Amity, that's where you see an ebb and flow in this. So we happen to be decreasing in those line items. But we are not shortchanging our special education services here in Orange. This is the infamous pie chart that you see. You'll always see salary and benefits, and you may have heard me say this constantly. I always want salary and benefits to be the largest. I call that the human capital. I don't care what occurs. I don't care if we have the best software. Now we have one-to-one devices. We can't be anything without our faculty and staff, that personal, that equity, and our human capital. Just a quick overview of the budget history since 2015. We are requesting a 3.06% increase for next year. And as I mentioned about the contractual obligations, just so you know, alone that's 2.2%. So if we did nothing at all, we'd be asking for a 2.2% increase. However, we're asking a 3.6% increase due to other factors in our line items. And as always, we thank you for your continued support for everyone in this room, everyone at home, and all our taxpayers. No matter if you have children coming into our system or not, we appreciate your support.
Thank you very much.
Okay, the next item on the agenda, we'll flip over to a different presentation now, and Jen Byers, Superintendent at Amity, will be presenting.
Thank you very much. Good evening, everyone. Thank you so much for allowing me to be here. This is actually our second public budget hearing because Amity has a completely separate budget. We filter into the towns, but we actually have to conduct our own public budget hearing as a regional school district. I would also like to recognize the board members that I see here tonight. Mr. Hartshorn, Ms. Laverdaddio, Mr. Davis, and Mr. Brow. I think that's everybody who's here tonight from our Board of Ed. And of course, our Board of Ed is not representing just the town of Orange, but the towns of Bethany, Orange, and Woodbridge. And so the 13 members, as well as the members from our 3 finance committees of the towns, are all a critical piece in the process of our budget development. Our budget is actually grounded in the BOA Portrait of the Graduate. This is something that we've been working on for the past 3 years. It's involved input from our parents, our students, our teachers, our elementary teachers, and our business and community secondary college leaders to help create this portrait of a graduate, which is ultimately what not just Amity is responsible for producing when students graduate with a diploma, but it's really a K through 12 responsibility to develop a student who is ready to go back into our towns and out into the greater world. So our entire budget is sort of grounded in producing and in making our portrait of the graduate. It's also grounded in the 3 fundamental A's that Amity is very proud of to provide to our students. The first being in the area of academics. We have advanced placement classes, early college experience classes, our science research program. We have national merit semifinalists, a pre-apprenticeship manufacturing program, and a very high graduation rate amongst our students going on to 2- and 4-year colleges. Our second area that we are proud of is athletics, and despite a pandemic which closed down teams, didn't allow for state championships in many areas, we were still able to produce some incredible results from our athletic programs last year, and that even continues into this year. This is still old information because we're now obviously in the spring season, but we did have success throughout the winter season and are so far doing extremely well with our spring sports. I would also point out that we have won the CIAC Michaels Cup Class Act Sportsmanship Award for 6 years. That's really a testament to our fans, which is ultimately a testament to our children who are at our games for displaying excellent sportsmanship, both for our own teams, but also for our competitors that we are going up against. And then finally, the last area is the arts. And so we have both our performing arts, which includes our Amity Creative Theater program, as well as a robust music program, and our visual arts program, which would be anything from our painting and drawing to our sculpture class that's taught alongside our our welding program. Much like Dr. Scarpetti mentioned, the budget process starts in October, and we have to address a couple things that we really don't have much control over. The first being our contractual obligations, federal and state mandates. Some are funded, some are not, and then our school and our department requests. We have a lot of back and forth between our administrators, and then once it gets to the finance committee level, a lot of back and forth between our finance committee as well as our Board of Education, revisions, looking for opportunities where we can eliminate redundancies, maybe looking for other funding opportunities through grants, but that eventually leads us to what we end up with as our final budget recommendation. We started our budget process with a 7.16% increase. And as I said, we have a lot of wrangling back and forth and discussions that allows us to reduce that budget over time. Ultimately, in February, the Amity Finance Committee voted to approve or recommend to the Board of Ed a 3.99% increase budget, which is what ultimately the Amity Board of Education adopted. So, what is in that budget beyond the commitment to athletics and academics and the arts? It does include a lot of personnel. The first one is an additional technology support technician. We were planning a slow implementation of one-to-one devices, essentially rolling out sort of another set of devices as each grade level rose up through our schools. And then March of 2020 hit, and we had to go to remote learning, and we essentially brought in 2,300 one-to-one devices all at once to get them to the kids so that they would be able to learn not just through the 2020 spring, but we were hybrid, which meant most of our kids were at home through the better part of the 2021 school year. So we absolutely used those one-to-one devices. It was really the only way that we were able to operate and provide our students with the education that they got. And of course, when you add that many devices, you need somebody to help fix them. So part of this technician is to support the one-to-one initiative. It's also to support our increasing needs for cybersecurity because we are a school that has a lot of traffic through our network, and we actually are vulnerable to some cybersecurity attacks. The second position is a school security officer. So if you've been to our schools, you would have noticed in the past couple of years we built security vestibules, not unlike what was already at the elementary schools. And in order to sort of get through the vestibule, you need somebody who's going to let you in. We added security officers to the middle schools, but we never added them to the high school. We just repurposed people. And what that's resulted in is somebody sitting inside the booth, but nobody actually, or fewer people patrolling the hallways. We have had some increased instances of students making some of not greatest choices, perhaps influenced by TikTok at times. So we do really see a need to put that security officer back and kind of restore us to the level of hallway security that we had prior to the installation of the vestibules. The second proposal of staff is really related to a special education program, and I will go into more details there. But Dr. Scarpetti alluded to the idea that sometimes students have to go to out-of-district placements. We would much prefer to keep them within our Amity schools, and this actually has a benefit overall to our budget and to the taxpayers, and I'll show you a little bit about that. But we are adding a special education teacher, a mental health clinician, and a part-time administrative assistant to help with this program. And finally, the last are two instructional or teaching positions in our regular education budget. The first being a life arts teacher in digital media, one at each of our middle schools. So that way we are able to provide more offerings to students in their electives, particularly electives that they take opposite their PE class. Basically, when we moved general music into the instructional rounds, and when kids only have the choice to take band, chorus, or Mandarin, if a student doesn't want to take Chinese, they're actually getting double music classes. And if that student's anything like me with no music ability whatsoever, that's kind of hard for students to sort of get through. So the idea would be to offer another elective for students so that they have another choice, so that they're not sort of being pigeonholed into these double music classes throughout the course of their day. And then finally, we are looking at a full-time position for a diversity, equity, and inclusion instructional coach, but it is partially funded by grant funding. So the impact on the budget is really a 0.5 position. And this is to really help us with our curriculum revisions that we are completing, our advisory programs that we put in place through our Spartan seminar or through our middle school advisory, and then also to help us with our instructional practices within the classroom. Staffing changes, a lot of times people are like, oh, but if you look at the Amity enrollment, it's kind of staying flat, it's sort of going down, why are you adding so much staff? So this kind of shows a breakdown of the staff that we've added. Essentially, the regular education staff, until we requested those life arts positions, has actually decreased over the past 5 years. Our special education staff has gone up significantly. It includes teachers, clinicians, paraeducators, job coaches, and then another really large part of our staffing increase is in the non-instructional staff, and that is school security and computer technicians. Again, completely aligned to the installation of the vestibules as well as the increase to the one-to-one initiative. The special education staffing changes has actually, even though it costs us money in the operational budget, it really saves us money overall. So when a student comes to us with needs that are so significant, a lot of times if we don't have a program for them, if we don't have a classroom for them to go into, we put them in an out-of-district placement. And Dr. Scarpetti explained that it's both the tuition as well as the transportation to that out-of-district placement. If we can create those programs within our Amity buildings themselves, yes, we have to hire more teachers, and yes, we have to hire more paraeducators, but it actually costs less to do that than to send the student to the out-of-district placement and provide their transportation. So the first program we created was our sales program. This was for our intellectually disabled students, so the students who needed the most academic support. It was created in grades 7 through 12, and that was created, I don't even know how many years ago, but long before I actually came to Amity. The second program was our Transition Academy, which provides services for students 18 to 22-year-old. Again, it's a program for students who are intellectually disabled and who are not going on to a 4-year college or anything like that, but who still continue to need support, which we are mandated to provide until they turn 22 years old. The new program we put in place just this year is our Spartan Prep program, which is for our emotionally disturbed students who require a clinical behavioral support as part of their instructional programming. That was put in at our middle school for grades 7 and 8, and not surprisingly, middle school students go to the high school. So the new program that we're putting in place for next year in this proposed budget is an emotionally disturbed program for our students who are at the high school. And so each year, if we had to send those students to their out-of-district placements, it would actually be $1.4 million more to the budget than if we keep those programs here within district. So Mr. Leahy sort of explained this as well. Even though the overall Amity budget is a 3.99% increase, it is allocated to the towns based on enrollment. And Bethany's enrollment went down. And consequently, that meant proportionally the increases to both Woodbridge and Orange went up. Our revenues did also decrease, and some of that is because of operating the programs within district. So you can see kind of how that impacts the overall changes with the 3.99% budget. We are also a regional school district, and so consequently, at the end of the year, we return funds to the town if we have some left over. And we have had a very good relationship with our towns in returning our funds, and so you can see kind of how our percent increase compares to what we returned in January of this year back to the towns from last year's budget. Our referendum is, again, on a different day from the Orange referendum. It is on May 3rd. It's the regular referendum times from 6 a.m. to 8 p.m., and the High Plains Community Center would be the polling place for the town of Orange. And thank you for your support for our Amity students.
Thank you. Bring our MC back.
I guess both of you are power forwards, I'm just a point guard. Let me see, point guard who lost his clicker, here it is. Okay, similarly, we're gonna go through the town services budget overview, which is a further breakdown of the material that we've already given you, a kind of a gross overview. Okay, what are we looking at? We're looking at revenue. The finance department puts them into 8 categories. As you take a look at them, you see that property taxes first is the largest one last year, this year. All right, amount of change and percentage of change. And we've identified 3 for board members to comment on. Property taxes, intergovernmental revenue, and fund balance and Amity related. And you can see by the code of the arrows on the right-hand side whether they've gone up and down by how much relatively and the exact amount. So Kevin and team, why don't you just walk us through anything you want on this chart, Kev?
Well, really, the property tax, the 2.2 million increase is, that's a big positive, and that's at a lower mill rate because there is a 1.5% decline. If it was kept flat, that number would be bigger, and you'd obviously be overtaxed on this budget. Intergovernmental is what we mentioned earlier. The bulk of that is the $700,000 from the state to offset the 29 mill rate on the motor vehicle taxes. And then the fund balance and Amity refund is pretty much where we did not budget any use of fund balance in the current year, and we have budgeted $700,000 from Amity.
Okay, any other comments from the team? John, anything you want to highlight here on the revenue side? No. Okay, Kev? Kev, you're good? Thank you. Okay, now, we also, besides the fact that we ask all our departments to be lean and look at their budgets, the way we would look at our home budgets, at some point in time, an outside set of eyes takes a look. And this is it's a course key, we always call this the funnel chart. All right, and we look at all our budgeted items, and Audrey and John did a particularly good job in finding what I call targets. You could give it whatever number of name. And then there was actually 7 reductions, which, as you can see in the bottom there, added up to $410,400 that we cut out of our budget after the departments did their share of cutting. All right, that under the right-hand side, there's some detail there. We moved some of it, 97,000, over to capital and took care of it that way. And we actually took 313, in addition to the 97,000, 313,400, also out of that. And these were, it runs the gamuts from, a small amount of money to a large amount of money. John and Audrey, do you have anything else to elaborate?
Just the one thing I'll say there, $108,000 were for 2 new police cars that we're able to fund out of the current budget. He has some openings in his patrol division, so there was some salary savings there. So we're able to do that now.
Okay, good. All right, now on the total side of the spending, you can see you have various town departments, from general government, from the top, public safety, all right, public works, culture and recreation, health and welfare, employee benefits, and town services. And this kind of summarizes what you already have in the document here. Okay, so it's kind of a handy summary. This presentation will be up online under the Board of Finance in today's date, so you can get to that. But specifically, again, how it's structured last year, this year, amount of change, and the percentage of change, and using the same thing anybody of us would do, right? What are the biggest changes and how come? And again, I'll throw it to my team here. Kevin, maybe you could
Well,
start.
the biggest part of general government, the 165,000, is in the changing world, and I think both superintendents alluded to it too. We have $50,000 in new software licenses with everything going on. $39,000, I believe, we have in the town clerk's office, and these are the bigger items with some of the maps and whatnot that's being digitized over there. And then we did add a part-time building inspector, that's much needed at this point, and a tax clerk. And that's the bulk of the 165.
And some of that IT stuff that you've talked about, and obviously IT costs are going up, supports, I think, the Board of Education as well. I'm not in the details of which one, but I know that's what we talked about. All right, the second one, Kev,
The employee benefits, the decrease is caused mostly totally by the health insurance dropped, because our pension contributions did go up this year. But our health insurance, we were fortunate somehow that actually went down. And that the town services, the entire 84,000, get back to insurance, it's all the town's liability insurance, auto insurance, workers' comp has gone up, obviously significantly, because that's the entire $84,000 is insurance related.
so the employee benefits insurance is just medical. This
Medical.
is outside type of insurance.
Correct.
John, team? Okay, good. All right. All right, so the overall budget perspective, these are, we showed earlier that there was a $2,253,661 increase in spending, right? Graphically, these are how it's distributed from the town departments in the orange, the reduction in the debt and capital, Orange Board of Education, I think these numbers should coincide with yours, right? And then the increase over on the Amity side. So you can see as a percentage basis on the right-hand side, it's just, Excel doing a little bit of analysis, that's all. But it's very clear that most of the increases were in the education end, led by Amity at 59%. Jens gave a very good outline of where their proposed budget would spend that money. In terms of the overall town over a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 8-year period, again, a chart that's in your document here, right? And it comes as no surprise as you look at the trends over time. First, we'll take a look at the employee benefits. We've already discussed it, but I want to make sure everybody kind of gets rather get detail into the numbers, get the overall view, right? That employee benefits is a driver of costs for the town over this 8-year period. That's the data. Similarly, you can see the commitment to education, at least as identified by spending money, and there it is right there, the data, okay? That would be the combined of Amity with the Orange Board of Education, okay? So too, and in terms of employee benefits, Kevin pretty much covered it, but to get a graphical view of what has happened, yes, we do see that the health and life insurance, the second one in from the left that's highlighted with the elliptical red box there, if you can call elliptical a box, it's gone down this year significantly. And that's a very, very big factor for us, all right? Or else we would be spending more. And you can see that the pension contributions, which we are actuarially required to follow if we want to maintain our AAA credit rating, right? Remember that? All right, it goes up pretty significantly on a steady climb, all right? So you can see the data. I think this picture is in your...
And with that, unlike other towns,
Yeah.
which we won't mention, we've never not paid 100% of the pension
I
contributions.
won't ask you to comment, Kevin.
I tell you that we've been 100% since I've been there.
No, I was talking about there. Okay, other things, capital expenditures. Now, the first asterisk, you can't read it, so I'll just read it from the bottom there. The approved funding came out of the capital account. So these items here are not in the budget. I just want to make that clear, all right? Some of them support the Orange Board of Education, all right? We worked out what kind of things we could help it there. In terms of the town, 97,000, Audrey and John, I think we talked about that. And one of the thrusts that Jim and his team, Donnie, right, I don't know if it's going to be $1 million. That's why I put a plus, and that's why you have 2 asterisks in the box. that we're expected to allocate funds for further capital outlays, like paving, all right, that's an example, all right, don't hold me to the million, I don't know what the number is at this moment in time, but we see this happening in the coming months. But this is not, isn't in the budget, it would come out of our capital account, okay? Overall then, graphical summary, you can see the Amity in the blue, the 22,683,860. Excuse me, that's the Orange Board of Education in the blue, leading over to the town departments in the orange, 25,680,400. You can see the capital and debt, which is at 4%. And you can see Amity, we saved the yellow for you, Jen, all right, and black. All right, 26,575,116, and there's the 33.9 number as well, okay? So that's a summary chart. Now, in terms of economic development, 60-year, I think we've gone through this. I interview people who know more about it, all right? But one of the things we like to take a peek at, and this is our top 10 taxpayers. If you haven't seen it, you might want to take a look. Years ago, we didn't have the UI, right? Now we do, and you can see how much their net grand list they have, and then what the estimated taxes would be if it was a certain mill rate. I think they use the current mill rate, because when Mark Brancasi, our assessor, did the analysis, he had to take what he knew. He didn't know what the mill rate would be for next year. So we won't hold them to exactly that numbers, but it's directionally correct. It's not off by much. But as you can see, our neighbor businesses, United Illuminating, Southern Connecticut Gas, the Fairfield Grand Reserve, that's apartments over on Prindle Hill. You can see the Connecticut Light and Power. FedEx has been growing, we'll get to that. Then you have various real estate leasing, the Orange VA, the Orange Plaza. You can just read them yourself, right? The hotels on Marsh Hill Road, and then Raymore and Flanagan Plaza. And so in total, you can see they add up to 13%, 13.73% of the grand list. And they contribute $10 million in taxes, all right? So significant economic development, right? Now, the process of why there's a lot of detail here, but basically you start, hey, someone wants to come here, so we have a preliminary meeting, then you have, preliminary plans, then they go through the pre-submission meetings, then they have committee reviews, and then you eventually start constructing in step 5. All right, and then you have a completed project at step 6. I'm not going to wear you out, but you can read the details if you wish at another time, but that's the overall process, and we've used this chart for a number of years now. Basically, it takes a long time, all right? You can see that, you got that, I'm sorry? Oh, okay. Big projects might take a lot longer. I put 9 to 36 months, it depends, right? That big project down on Indian River Road, for example, been going for a while. But some of them don't take very long. So you can see that it's an estimate of the time that it takes to make a project bring in taxes for the town. And by the way, speaking of this, I'm not an expert on it, so it's a conceptual chart, but if you used to on a piece of property have a period of tax, certainly they're paying the land tax and other things. So the green is what the old value would be paying to the town. The orange would be the new value once it gets fully constructed. But there is what they call enhanced value as you go through that process by which you start paying more and more taxes. The details I'll leave to the experts. But I just wanted to share that with you so you could, sometimes somebody thinks I really understand this, but it really, like one-eyed man in the kingdom of the blind or something like that. Okay, so here's what we want to remind ourselves, right? 3 pages, all right? First of all, we know we have Hilton Garden Inn. We didn't have Hilton Garden Inn a number of years ago. We've got it now. So currently it's the white column, and it's obviously up and running, right? Urban Air, all right, that's sold. That's all up and running as well. Has been for a number of years. U-Haul, they did a development. You can see over there in 2018, it was a 1. It was a 1 on that development process of 6 steps. Now it's a 6. It's been a 6 for a while, and we put in a value. I believe what now? It's the cost of construction value, right? Nothing that has to do with the taxes we get. Okay. All right, and then we have the next one, Home Depot Plaza. We're all familiar with that, right? There's two components. Obviously, we have Planet Fitness now. It moved over to there, and then it has been segmented into two parcels. Similarly, Gyroscope went from a 1, it was off the board for a number of years. It was a 0, didn't even, and now it's a 5, all right? And so it's going to offer housing needs that Orange is currently in short supply. The Route 1 Smith Farm Road, that hasn't been developed at all. We left it on the list, not to bury it. And the Earth Mineral Site, as you can see, it used to be in 2018, it was a 5, and now it's moved to a 6, and it's open and operating, all right, and doing well. Second page, just to keep everybody informed, there's assisted living on Indian River. That's the big one, right, Jim? And that's at stage 5. So it's actively under construction. All right, and it paused a little bit due to COVID, and you can see the building. I mean, I just don't know how big this building's going to be. VA outpatient, that's up and running. You can see the Eastern Tech are very friendly. That person helped with remember the fire truck 50K challenge that the Board of Finance members helped support. Pat, you were highly involved with that. They provided for free the artwork on the big signs that we had that identified for people that we were doing that challenge, which worked out nicely for the Orange Volunteer Fire Department team. Federal Express, it's now up and running. Back in 2018, it was a twinkle in somebody's eye. Now it's up and running and bringing in more and more revenue for the town. Warehouse facility, you can see that over Executive Boulevard. All right, that's up and running now. And also a redevelopment project in Firelight. I segmented that the way I understood it. There's two pieces, so I put it in one's a 6 and one's a 5. The second piece is the ones on the right there. One is the liquor store and the children's therapy building spaces, which is full. And then they're developing the property in the other part. And I guess while I was down visiting my kids for 2 weeks, apparently it no longer is no longer there. It happens, right? So anyway, final page, not to wear you out, but Amazon has two pieces, right? One is a hub, and one's their motor fleet up there where Sam's used to be. Salami has not been developed, but that was on the list last year, so we left it. Rings End, which is where Bedding Barn is, that's been up and running. It was up and running last year, obviously still there. Similarly, Mission Barbecue. I was there at the grand opening, which was interesting and a fun thing. Right next to it, they're doing heavy work on it. I noticed as I got gas the other day down at Costco, that's really, they're moving on that one. And I hear from some people in my own board that that's really great chicken.
The one in New Haven's excellent.
It's something like that.
There's two things, Jim, there's two things. There's Haven Hot Chicken and Jimmy John's Subs.
Oh, that's right, you told me that. I should have added that in. Violation. All right, I won't get the 8 tonight. So anyway, the last one there, there's a new grocer. Again, we sworn to secrecy, so I don't need to know, but whoever it is, that's developing pretty well, somewhere between a 4 and a 5. So as you can see, as you take a 6-year view, or a 5-year view, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5-year view, you can see there has been economic development, even if it's a little slowed down. But the real secret of this year, I think, is what we said earlier. And what we said earlier was, in the business personal property, somehow UI found a lot more, all right, which really jacked up our net grand list increase, which was very important to what we're trying to do here. Okay, finally, I did a little analysis. Couldn't help it, right? I had it from last year, and you can see, so you see there, UI, for example, I won't wear you out, but their estimated taxes last year were for this year, a little over 5 million. Last year it was a little 3,682. So $1.4 million, let's just say, right? Increase, right? So that's kind of what we're talking about. Similarly, Southern Connecticut, apparently a lot of that was personal property, but they're down for about $1 million, whereas last year it was $655,000. High percentage increase, as you can see, 53%. And then you see FedEx. I think what's happening at FedEx is they're drilling in more and more trucks and equipment for which they then have to pay you know, more taxes because it's assets, right? So whatever reason, there's 20% increase in theirs. All right, so again, you can access this data, you can run as many numbers as you wish, but those are a couple to give you a flavor of what was going on. I figured I could do that. Okay, so what does budget mean to everybody? All right, in the room here, on OGAT, means this. It means that we have what we said earlier, the bottom line up front, which we're now at the end, so we'll just move right through it. And if you have a house that's assessed at $355 in the yellow, that would be the home value. All right, and if it's assessed at 70%, which would be $248, 70% of that other number, we have a mill rate in this proposal to support all this spending that we've been, you know, given to us. All right, last year it was 33.25, and this year we're seeing a reduction of to 33.75. It's a half mil reduction, which translates to $124, which is 101.5% reduction in taxes. So that's the bottom line if that's how you're thinking about it, right? So that's what would be required to support what's in those three components, all these numbers. All right. This is a mill rate chart over the years. I won't bore you with anything else, but we showed it last year. I figured I'd just pop it in there again. All right. Okay, next steps, referendum, voting dates. We've already been mentioned that. We'll just mention it formally. Here we are tonight in the town budget hearing in the April 21st box there with the orange circle. I believe Jen mentioned you have the district hearing on the 2nd, right? And then the next day is the vote across 3 towns, right? And then 11th of May is the annual town meeting, right? Annual town meeting on a Wednesday. And the following Wednesday, you vote on the overall town budget. So there's separate voting dates for the Amity and the town budget. All right? So that's going to be kind of wrapping it up. The next thing I'm going to pop up is question and answers. Again, the process is pretty simple. We've had one person sign up, so that person is first. So you come up here and be as informal as you like, but the process is signing here, and then you come up and ask whatever question you want. All right, everybody good on the process? Okay, good. So I'll just get to that slide, leave that up while we go through the process of Q&A, and I believe the first person is up. So if we come up, just state, we'll leave that up there, you can, you know, and whatever you want to ask questions.
Thanks, Jim.
Okay. Hi, my name is Misty Barnes. I live at 23 Whitney Lane. And I realize that what I'm focusing on is a drop in the bucket regarding this entire budget. But I strongly feel that even though it's small, if it gets ignored now, it'll eventually snowball. So my question has to do with the Amity budget, because I have a sophomore at the high school. And my question is, why does Region 5 need a full-time educator position to, quote, facilitate diversity, equity, and inclusion into the curriculum? When my own daughter, who attends the high school, rolled her eyes when I read that to her and said, "Mom, that's like every teacher there." She is sick of this agenda, and I am also sick of it. Every teacher at the high school, maybe I shouldn't use that blanket statement. Many teachers at the high school already have been empowered to promote DEI, and it's clear if you walk the halls. It's very clear in my daughter's honors American literature class, where Hemingway, Twain, Salinger, Thoreau, and the list can go on, are no longer taught. I think the curriculum has been diversified. Please stop attempting to be the moral police. This is the job of parents. I will teach my children about diversity, equity, and inclusion. And it does include that literature that has been eliminated from the curriculum. I do not need to employ teachers to do my job as a parent. It is again my responsibility. Amity is to focus on teaching subject matter, and only subject matter. Amity is not a private business. My tax dollars help support that school. And all I want is my child to be educated. That is why my husband and I moved here 10 years ago. And for the first time, the smallest part of the Amity budget is going to be the reason I vote no. So once again, to end with the question, since this is Q&A, why does Region 5 need a full-time educator to facilitate diversity, equity, and inclusion into the curriculum? Thank you. Before I speak, all right, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Misty, from Whitney Lane in Orange. All right, I didn't know it in that role, but anyway, Lauren?
Is there a response or it's only a question?
The response would have to come from somebody from the Amity Board, because
Yeah.
that's not to us. The,
We had our district hearing. I can, maybe what I can do is Jim provide you with, I'll sort of take down these questions and I can provide you with the responses that you could then post, I suppose,
Mr.
someplace.
Chairman, is that a process?
that would work.
All right,
Okay.
reasonable?
Fair enough.
All right. Team? Kevin? You good with that approach?
That's fine.
Okay, so there'll be that coming back, Misty and others. Thank you.
Thank you.
She was here and already spoke, so why couldn't she get up and actually answer the question?
Could you give us not to hold you to that's only what you would say, could you give I don't know, half a minute of what to respond? I think that would be useful. And then we got a more detailed response going forward. That's a good idea. Thank you. We're all on the same team, right?
So instructional coaches are actually a fairly common feature of elementary schools, but it's something that is not as common to find amongst high schools. And what instructional coaches really do is they are educators who are able to work alongside teachers. A lot of times our professional development is what we would call a one-off. So our staff on November 2nd or 3rd, which is election day, gets a full day of professional development. And we put them through workshops, and what we have found is that over the course of the years, our workshops and our trainings have not actually translated to changes in our classrooms. And this can apply whether we're talking about technology, whether we're talking about reading instruction, or if we're talking about diversity, equity, and inclusion. So what we have done over the years is we've added instructional coaches. We have 2 instructional coaches in technology, 1 in literacy, and now our DEI coach. And the idea behind that is to be able to have the coaches push into the classrooms to either help teachers with planning as they prepare for lessons, to co-teach and teach alongside them as they actually do those lessons, and then to give feedback and support when something goes awry or if they haven't actually been able to accomplish what they were hoping to do. So our diversity, equity, and inclusion teacher is really part of what stems back to at least predating me, but I think the original challenges that Amity faced when we had some concerns about the way our students of Jewish faith were being treated within our school building, and that's been something that we have continued to look at over the course of the last 3.5 years. Diversity, equity, inclusion, I think, is often mistakenly perceived as a race issue, but as I look around this room, we're a very diverse group of people, whether it's by race or by gender or by age or by ability. It includes our special education students. And so what we're really looking at is ways in which we can be inclusive of every single student who walks through our building doors and who is part of Amity for the 6 years that they are there. It's ironic, I was at the PTSO meetings earlier this evening, and our PTSO parents couldn't understand how one person was going to do the job that we were proposing. So, it's a balance between having a big ask of this per person, but then also making sure that we are not sort of having too many instructional coaches within our building itself. But that's why we need it, because we're not seeing the translation of the work that we've done through professional development into our day-to-day practices within our classrooms. And it really is about every single child that we have in our school.
Okay, and you'll follow that up with more detail?
Yeah.
Okay, good. All right, so we got a response, we're gonna follow it up with more detail, and then obviously the future can be more communication back and forth. Is everybody good with that? Kevin, you good with that? Okay, Warren, you're up.
Warren Mudrick, 411 Pruden Lane. I've lived in Orange for 20 years now, came from Milford, and I have a copy I'd like to give to the Board of Finance concerning the education budget primarily. What I don't understand is that this country spends more money per student than any other country on the planet, and yet our results are near the bottom. We don't look so good. The reading, the writing, and the arithmetic. There are a lot of other ancillary items that are implemented in the education system that I don't think are necessary, but just specifically, I would like to give you a copy of this. This was a reprint from the New American magazine. I'll take 1 minute to read what the face says on it. And that is, and it might be a little shocking in this era to hear this, it's harsh, but if anybody wants to ask me further about it, all these assertions could be validated. My wife's a retired teacher of 30 years from Milford. She could tell you a lot better than I can. But the face of this 8-page print is Critical Race Theory, Marxist Poison Infecting America. Now, you've mentioned on your screen that the feds are going to help you. They're going to give you bait. That's all it is. And if they were going to give you money, ad infinitum, 100%, that's a good reason not to take it, okay? And I hope you don't take money for this espousing the critical race theory, because you're being intimidated by the feds or the state. So the last sentence on this face of this book is, critical race theory, all the rage in America's government schools, is just rehashed Marxist critical theory attempting to divide the country along racial lines. And I think it's very obvious that that's what's happening now. That seems to be the tenor of the times. And I don't think we're ever going to get together unless all this is resolved in a fair-handed manner. So I'll give you each a copy. And anybody else would like a copy, as long as I have them, you can have them too.
Warren, if you could give me a couple of copies, since it specifically spikes out education, I think Vince or Bill and Vince and Jen and maybe Chris, courtesy, so that everybody has it and you can form your own judgments. If you have extras, I'd be happy to take it and give it to you.
Let me give you all.
Okay, good. How about we give one to Vincent, all right, and one over to Jen? Well, we'll target, first of all, the first target, all right? And let me see, I'll give one to Jimmy and Mitch. How about that? Senior men from both parties. Thank you. Okay, whoever's on next on the list would be up. Liz?
My name is Liz Nusafora. I live on Lambert Road. So, as it continues with the CRT, as a parent of an Amity High School student, I will say that Amity does have a great athletics department, and we could use a bigger budget for the athletics department, and I would agree we do need more security at the high school due to the things that are constantly going on there. But you want to add a diversity, equity, and inclusion instructional coach. That is called critical race theory. We're not having it. You will get votes no across the board if you're going to put that in there. We don't have a problem as taxpayers supporting our schools, supporting our educations. We have a problem with critical race theory. I'd like to know whose business it is of yours to teach our children about sexuality, gay sex, and that there's more than two genders, especially in elementary school levels. It's not your responsibility. It's our responsibility as the parents, not yours. If this budget goes through, which pray to God it doesn't, will you give us, the parents, an opportunity to opt our children out of this ridiculousness? It's a valid question. I'd like it answered.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
So there's a question, I don't know if we need to consider it, Superintendent Byers, or are we happy to entertain whatever process we want to handle here?
That would have to be either of the superintendents, but they might not be able to answer it at this very moment.
All right, well, let's get at least 10 words.
I'm not clear because there was a comment about the elementary school, but the DEI coach is at Amity, so I'm not even really sure which of us that was.
Point of
for.
clarification?
If budget goes through, would you be able to give the parents the opportunity to opt our children out?
Get our taxes back.
I'm not sure.
We don't, there are too many people that do not want our children involved in critical race theory. It is ridiculous. You're getting government funding to push this down our children's throat, and we are fed up with it. We don't really have a problem with anything else on the budget other than that.
Okay, when you say opted out, just,
And, so, can we sign something to state that that the high school will not teach our children about critical race theory, whether it be the multiple genders they claim that there are, whether it be the different types of sex that goes on, the books that are disgusting in the high school. Will you give us, as parents, the opportunity to sign a waiver or something to get our children away from learning about this junk?
okay.
So that's my question.
I mean, my only statement is that the high school does not teach critical race theory. So I.
If we could, all right, obviously different opinion on that. Well,
We need a real education system.
I will show you pictures of things that my child has brought home from school, in that school. So like, there's gender brand man, there's white privilege, there's these workshops that are going on are beyond, above and beyond being shoved down our children's throats, and it needs to stop. And we need an opportunity to opt out our children from these types of teachings. We also need an awareness about, because you have to read the fine line of every single email that comes through
how
there.
about we do this, because what we're doing is we're having a good discussion, okay? We're in the Q&A of the budget. These are concerns that you have, so you have a forum for that, and that's valid, okay? Why don't, if anyone else wants to sign in, so that if we're gonna broadcast this, we can't be doing it ad hoc, is all I'm saying, okay? So why don't you sign up?
Let her go. She started, because I was
No.
next. But let her go.
Well,
No, you can go, and I'll be happy to follow up.
in other words, we'll have a motion to make someone go first? But make-
No, we don't need that.
Okay. Why don't you go up right now and express one?
And I appreciate everybody's opinion, but you know, and we're going to allow everybody to speak, but I think a lot of this belonged directly at Amity. I don't know if you've been up there to speak also, but we're,
I've been to several places
Okay.
to speak,
Name and-
unfortunately.
and
So
your
I'm Michelle Tenney. I'm on 327 Ann Rose Drive in Orange. I have two older sons who have been through the Amity school system. One's 31, one's 29. I now have a 14-year-old in a freshman in the high school. I'm completely miffed and confused as to the direct opposite experience that my older children have had as opposed to my younger son. There's overstepping of boundaries in what is being taught in this school on levels that I am just like, why? And I'm a why person. I need to know like what's the end result? What's gonna happen? Why are we doing this? It's only causing more division than it is causing unity in this school. My children have black friends, they have Asian friends, they have Indian friends. They have always been inclusive because that's how they were raised at home. This school has no business trying to suggest anything other than unity instead of causing division. And what I'm learning, my son has come home with a pamphlet of a gender, well, it's a gingerbread man. And on the gingerbread man is all these questions and answers, not answers, questions about, well, what does this look like to you? And how does this look like to you? I'm sorry, but those are questions and answers that go on in my house at a dinner table between my husband, myself, and my son. There's no place for the school system to be teaching any of this stuff. I pay tax dollars for a good school system. People move here for an excellent school system. And I am beyond disgusted. We've reached out thousands of times to emails, and we get crickets. We get crickets back. They're not talking to us. They're not responding to us. She sits there like you got all the answers, and you don't. You honestly don't. We're trying to tell you over and over and over and over again that we're not happy about this. So why aren't there being changes? Why are we not talking about changes? Why are we always, I'm getting emails on happenings at the high school that if I don't nitpick every single bit of it and I don't click every single link, there's the fine print that if I miss it, I don't know that my child's gonna be subjected to something. That's not cool. We are your constituents. Like, hello. Vince, you and I have rapport, we go way back. You know what I'm about and what I believe in, and it's all about our children. It's all about their health and their well-being. I've been the chair of the Healthy Lifestyle Committee for this elementary school system for 6 years before COVID. I'm invested. I lived here for 26 years. This has got to change. I'm sorry. It's got to change. Bottom line.
Jude? And then Glenn's next, and then anybody else wants to come up and sign.
Hi, I'm Jude Toohey. I live at 606 Grassy Hill Road. I'm relatively new to Orange. I've probably been here 7 years. And I came here because of the small town feeling. However, with the school budget, my children are older. They were educated in Milford. I lived there for almost 40 years before I moved here. And recently I did write a letter because I felt, though, that having children that had already been through a school system, even though it wasn't Orange, I really didn't have a reason or a right to speak. But then I realized that as a taxpayer, as someone who cares about this town, because I chose this town, my husband and I made a conscious decision to move to Orange from Milford because this is where we want it to be. And this is where we want it to retire and just live out our lives. Unfortunately, that didn't work too well in our favor because my husband passed away since we moved here. However, I really want to implore the seniors, the people that that no longer have children in the school system, get out and vote because your vote counts and it's important to vote. I'm sorry, but in all honesty, when my children were growing up, these were discussions that we had. I have two, actually three. I have a 45-year-old, a 35-year-old, and a 31-year-old. These are three men that are as diverse as could be. They love people. They love different environments. They travel. They love to just learn about cultures. And this came from my husband and I. It didn't come from school. When it came to the school teaching education, sex education at the time, parents, we were there with them. We sat in the room with them. And then we left when it became that critical part where we knew the children really didn't want us there and they were not going to open up and talk freely because their parents were in the room. So we got that. But we were part of that discussion, and it became part of what we talked about as a family. And it shouldn't be something that is discussed in a school where we don't have control or we don't have the knowledge. And I think the opt-out meant, and what I got from the opt-out, was that when you're going to have those discussions, there should be something that goes home to a parent that's not hidden in chapter, 4, subsection 45 that they don't know about. It should be a piece of paper or an email stating, this is what we're going to talk about, this is what we want to do. If you don't want your child to be a part of this, you have a right to say no. Because every parent has a right to parent the way they want. And it should not be a school's decision to parent the way you want. And I'm not talking just about Amity, I'm talking about any Board of Education, but at this point, it seems as though Amity has really pushed that issue in everything that I've read. And 5.31% of an increase, it's kind of crazy when you think about it, and with the rest of our budget. So I really and truly feel in my heart, and whether it's a question or just a statement to you and to everyone here, parents should parent and schools should teach. And our children need to have that foundation because we are going to get trounced on economically, just job-wise. Our children are not going to have a foundation at some point. We need to be sure that these children, once they graduate, if they go to college, even if they don't, whatever they decide to do in their lives, they need to be sure that they have opportunities open to them, and on the world stage, they are listened to. Because right now, I think we're humiliating ourselves with a lot of what we're doing, and it's not helping anyone. Thank you for your time.
Okay, again, this is the last one that is signed up, so if you're thinking on speaking, please come up and sign up. And state your name and address.
Glenn Ketchy on Wildwood Drive. Just want to thank you all for allowing me the opportunity to step up and say a few words. First of all, Mr. Zioli, thank you for the hard work you and all of the boards and groups within Orange have done to keep a fiscally responsible budget, as well as the Board of Finance I used to be a member of. They work very hard at doing this, and I commend you all up for what you guys do. So thank you. I'd also like to thank Dr. Scarpetti for what he's done with the Orange Board of Education. I think you've, year after year, have really grown to kind of adapt to the Orange way of being fiscally responsible. And it shows in just what you're putting forward as a budget, as well as your Board of Ed members who have been with you for many years. So thank you as well for that. It's commendable. Thank you. I would like to address, though, Dr. Byers, your Amity budget. I'm not going to go into some of the things people have said here because it's not what I read necessarily, but I will say I will be objecting and voting no and down on the budget, primarily for what is this hiring of a diversity, equity, and inclusion person, as well as an extra security guard. I just feel the school has gotten to the point where it feels like Fort Knox to begin with. We have a full-time police officer in the school. The fact we have to add more security in the halls is just concerning, especially when I see the memo that you sent out when just days, it was 2 weeks almost to the day, right before school break, you allowed a protest to go on in the school where added police officers were hired, yet the kids, and I'll call them kids, were absolutely out of control. To allow that to go on for an hour and a half and to use our resources, photography was done on behalf of the school, the principals were there as part of this, you were there as part of this, so our time and money went into funding what was, in my eyes, just obscene. Allowing these kids in the hallway to scream obscenities.
What was the protest? I have no.
I couldn't even tell you the title of it. I would have to ask Dr. Byers the title of it. Well, it was a racial protest that went against I don't want to speak for the school, why they allowed this. Part of it was supposed to be, in my understanding, it was supposed to be a silent protest. And it actually got put on YouTube video for the world to see. It was
To stop racial slurs and
racial slurs, inequity, but those racial slurs and inequity were shouted in the school during school hours for all the students to hear. It went so far as to not only did it get posted, other kids who were not considered part of, let's say, this minority group, names were called out and actually mentioned as being I'm going to call it defectors of or against some of these things, which they are not. And things were posted online as well. So this thing went way overboard. And my concern is, and I don't want to go off track here, because my point is I'm objecting to the budget, because now you want to add a person to this when you couldn't control. What you did is that you wrote the memo and sent it to all of us the day before, said we're going to have this organized event, and it went totally off the rails. And for that, I heard enough people saying parents should be parents. I have an Eagle Scout. I have kids that care about diversity. We do a lot of things for the community as well as other communities in town. And after I saw how the school handled what they felt was a diversity event, I don't know how you're going to do it with a diversity officer now or a diversity teacher, because this was a cluster, this was a nightmare, and it affected so many children. And I guess that doesn't matter. And I'm concerned about this. So I'm just saying that I'm not going to vote for this, and it's something that I feel strongly about. But I do appreciate everything our town and the Orange Board of Ed have done to keep things fiscally fit and responsible for us. So thank you.
Thank you, Glenn.
Chris is going to be next, and then again, if you want to do that, Chris, you have to come up and sign in, that kind of thing.
Hi, I'm Chris Brow. I live at 160 Oman Avenue. I've been a resident of the town now 27 or 28 years or so. And one of the things that attracted us to the town was the small town feel, the people in the town, and also the school system and the support that the town gave to the school system. I was going to talk about more details around the budget and give some support. I do also want to just repeat that, everyone that works on these committees, there's a lot of hours, there's a lot of time, and it is a labor of love. It's a labor of support for the town. It's a labor that we do willingly, that we do year after year. I've been on the Amity board for now about 11 years, 10, 11 years. I've been on the Board of Finance for, 5 or 6 of those. I'm now the chair of the Board of Finance this year. I know that we've gone through 2 years of a difficult time where we weren't able to meet like this. I think it's important for us to meet and talk face to face and be able to share these concerns, these ideas. There are 7 members of the board that come from Orange. There are 4 of them here tonight, which should tell you something. Please reach out to us, come talk to us. Let's talk about what your concerns are. I can't get into minutia, and I'm not going to be the lightning rod to try to defend a particular event or what happened because I'm not in the school. I do have 3 daughters, and 2 of them have gone through the school system. 1 is currently in the school system. I know the challenges of dealing with a 16-year-old in today's school system as far as what they perceive and what they care about. And I think there are, of course, with anything, there's multiple sides to the stories. At the same time, I don't want anyone to feel that their tax dollars are going to something that they don't support. And I will tell you that the Board of Ed does have several key roles to play in managing the schools. Although we have administration that do the day-to-day activities, we do look at curriculum, we do look at policy, we do represent, different aspects of it, how we respond to the state, how we deal with the budget and set the budget and fund the school. So while I was here to say that I think a 3.99% budget is a reasonable budget, I think it's in line with our peers in other districts. I think it's in line with our good friends at the elementary school that are just around 3%. And I would support that budget. But I also definitely do want to hear about your concerns around the children and around what you're hearing, what you're feeling. I know nationally, I think there's a lot of inflammatory posts, viral, et cetera, which tend to push people a certain way. I will tell you that I do check in with my daughter. I do, again, I have that little window into what's going on. But please reach out to your board members, talk to us. Again, there's 7 of us. You probably know one of us from Orange. There's 13 in total from the other 2 towns, but there's 7 from Orange. And again, there's 4 of them here tonight. So please reach out and let's have that conversation and let's hear those concerns because we do have ability to look at that. We're also parents, we're also members of the town, and we want what's best for the kids, all in all. So that's, and like I said, I'll stay afterwards to answer any questions or talk to anybody that wants to talk about anything. Okay? Thank you very much.
Looks like Anthony's next, and again, Anthony will be the last one unless somebody else signs up. So please help yourself.
Anthony Scarinzi on Oakview Drive Extension. I don't have a question so much as just some comments. I just wanted to... Sorry. Wanted to reiterate some points that I wrote for an article recently. So I'm not an eloquent speaker, so I'll be going from notes. After reading all 3 of Jim's articles in the Orange Town News concerning the Amity budgets over the past years, I felt compelled to speak and urge town residents to do the same. Regardless of whether or not one has children in the school system, the Amity budget affects everyone's wallet, and I would think that those without children in the system would be even more concerned as they're paying just as much as those who do. In his articles, Jim provides hard facts in his efforts to demonstrate the yearly Amity budget increases are both unnecessary and unwarranted. While he spells it out well, a few things truly jumped out at me I'd like to relate. Over the last 16 years, the average budget increase has been about 2.35, yet this year's proposal is almost 5%. This is despite the fact that enrollment has been following a steady downward trend, and the average yearly budget surplus for the last 4 years has been almost $3 million. He makes the point that if over the last 4 years we hadn't increased the budget at all, we'd still have had an ample surplus every year. Instead, the individual cost to each Orange taxpayer for just the surplus portion of the budget is $684 over the past 4 years. There's much more significant data I saw in his articles, but based on these facts alone, I can't imagine why in a referendum we as taxpayers would vote yes on a budget that includes an increase at all. I would urge everyone to do their homework on this issue. Thanks.
Good evening. My name is Marianne Holden. I live at 814 Grassy Hill Road. My parents moved here 67 years ago, so we've been here for a long time and seen a lot of changes. As I look around the room, I don't see a lot of diversity. I've taught overseas and locally, and this is mostly a white crowd, if you look around. Hello? That's not news. But the world is not mostly a white crowd. If they've stopped teaching Twain or Hemingway and they bring in somebody like Toni Morrison, I don't think that's a big problem. Your kids can still read or hear or watch a movie made by any of these people. They probably are even shown in the school. But the point is that we do need a little bit more diversity in our curriculum. Calling it a Marxist agenda, I think, is just inflammatory and provocative and not helpful. I think that there have always been questions about sex and sex education, wherever you are. And it's always difficult for some people and not difficult for others. But if you're a person, and I have two sons also in their 20s and 30s, they are Caucasian, heterosexual men, but I know that there are homosexual kids in the schools who sometimes feel that they're not noticed or they're made fun of. I know that there are all kinds of kids who need to come out of a high school and know that there are all kinds of other stories being told, not just the ones that we've all grown up with. And I liked growing up with those, but there have always been changes in schools, and I think that it's not a big problem to continue talking to your Board of Ed people, to keep the information flow open so that people know what's coming at them, especially when it comes to sex, because that's such an emotional topic for people. But the information flow has to go both ways, and that's on the school to do. But it's also important for us to realize that as much as we love or don't love the America we grew up with, there are all kinds of things that are changing, and it's going to happen in Orange too. I just want to say thank you for letting me speak, and I hope that you have a more balanced approach to what this budget is about.
All right, thank you. Okay, again, if you want to speak, Mitch is next, and then you come up and sign in.
Good evening, Mitch Goldblatt, 291 Drummond Road. I came here for an Orange Town budget and a critical race theory fight breaks out. I want to address that briefly, but I do have a question about the town budget tonight. I will say that it's a little disappointing to hear people so upset over diversity, inclusion, equality. It almost breaks my heart that this town, this district, has seen anti-Semitism, has seen racism, has seen homophobia, and yet we're hearing people rejecting ways to fix those problems, ways to look at them. Thank God this isn't Newtown, but I'd be damned if I would say no to security officers as after what's happened in our schools. It's just somewhat dumbfounding to me to listen to some of the comments. And I'll just conclude this part of it with one statement. The critical race theory pamphlet that was passed out is backed by the John Birch Society, is an affiliate. I think that says it all. And if that doesn't say we need some discussion of diversity, inclusion, equality, then I don't know what does. Now, to the town budget. I have a couple quick questions, and then I'll sit down. I see that our undesignated fund balance has dropped, I guess, to 15.87%. Can I ask if we're using undesignated funds for other purposes this year? Are we using it to balance the budget? Are we using it for capital expenses, or is it not dropping? Just help me out.
None of it's being used in this budget.
Okay.
That we know of. I mean, if there's a shortfall somewhere, something happens, we said this all during the pandemic. There have been transfers per our, we set up the capital fund per a suggestion from our auditors several years ago. And there have been transfers into that account, which is, we're possibly the paving $1 million that Jim mentioned earlier would come from, so,
Okay. All right.
so you are reading it correctly.
All right, thank you. And then there's the other, so Kevin, help me out then, just with this balance of capital, it's kind of spongy up there as to how much is gonna be in there. You're not budgeting for capital, you're waiting for what the balance of this budget is?
Right now, because of what's going on with, and John or Kevin could speak more eloquently than me, but, well, most people can.
I think they do just fine.
Because of the ARPA situation.
Right.
We're kind of in a holding pattern as to what the town will be using funds for versus the ARPA funds that I believe your board's gonna have a
Okay.
say in.
Yeah.
So we haven't, that's why that slide showed a total of 145 plus another small number is all that's been approved so far.
Okay.
Because we're in discussions on those things.
So if those numbers are as high as they might be, I would ask this board, as I did last year, I think the year before, to put any excess funds towards paving. The side roads in this town are still, we're getting there, but we're getting there too slowly. The side roads are in some cases deplorable, and quite frankly, there's been a lot of people, a lot more of my neighbors that I've seen during the last 2 years, walking a lot more, and the roads aren't just not safe for cars, they're not safe for walking in some places, a lot of twisted ankles. And so I'm hoping that if there is excess money, that it can be used to increase the paving budget again, so we can get more of those side roads, the neighborhoods paved the way they should be and the way we expect to be in this town. Thank you.
That's absolutely the goal.
Okay, Jim's
Thank you.
gonna go next, but if there's a late entry.
Does anybody else wants to go?
Jim usually gets the last word.
If only it was a word.
That was on camera.
So I wasn't going to say anything. Bonnie Palacha from 419 Orange Center Road in Orange. 4 of my children, we moved here for the school systems. 4 of my children went through the school system. I have 4 grandchildren now in the school systems, 1 in junior high and several in the lower, in the elementary schools. My grandson, who is at the junior high, will not step foot into the high school for what has been going on. And we're just going to do everything we can to make this happen. We're not rich, we don't have a lot of money, but I feel that strongly. And somebody said, well, Mr. Barrow, well, we can talk to the Board of Education. Well, we've been there, and they don't listen. And we've said it over and over again, and they don't listen. And so we're just finished, I'm finished talking, and so is my son and his wife. And that's it.
All right, thank you, Dennis. Last call. All right, Jim?
Had a lot of budget things, but I don't know how many of them we'll use.
We can get back.
No. But thank you to the Board of Finance and Audrey and John and all your staff and the superintendents and their board members and staff and all of you who took the time to come out tonight and listen to this. And don't forget, the town meeting is on Wednesday, May 11th at 7:30 in this building, just so you know that also. But, you know, the Board of Finance has done a very good job with the Town of Orange budget. They've worked well with the boards of education, and while we do, certainly, and it's proven tonight, we don't agree on every issue, Orange is still a good place. Everybody has said the same thing. While you may disagree about some of the educational parts, every one of you said how much you loved Orange and why you're here and how much you value Orange. So I find that very encouraging. And just when, if you think it's that bad, I ask you just to think and say a prayer for the people in the Ukraine. Because as bad as we may have it, we have nothing bad compared to what those people over there are going through. So when I think about that daily, I've made a few bows that are around town, and I have some more to do. But with that said, I've received several contacts, not a lot, but several, from concerned parents about the programs, all at the high school. Nothing with the elementary school, and I've tried to link some of those parents together so that they would be able to network, I'll call it. Mr. Brow made a statement tonight that he and others are here to listen. The trouble is, you have 13 board members from 3 different communities, and the views in the other 2 communities, or all 3 communities, may be varied. So while you are certainly welcome here to express your opinions, the superintendent, board members are here, Woodbridge is the place that you have to have a united front if you really feel that this is the wrong education process. I was brought up in a house where exactly what all of you have said. There's a parenting part and an education part. And my brother is far, far more well-read than I am. He has 3 master's degrees, his PhD in library science and all this stuff. He's a pretty smart guy. And he was up here this past week, and we sat there talking at the table, and we're opposite political parties. And we sat there at the kitchen table while we're having dinner talking, and our views, which truly used to be here and here, the way our country, whether on a national, state, or local level, and he lives in Washington, D.C., his wife works for the federal government. She's a Eastern European language specialist. She's kind of busy right now with all that's going on. Our views started out here. We've ended up just about here. We're almost on the same planet at this point. And, yeah, and, you know, you need to express your opinions. For so many years, people were complacent. We've had more dialogue here tonight at this little budget meeting. They used to have it in the gym. Than I've heard I've been here 17 years in this position, going on 18, and I was on the board for 6 before that. So dialogue is good. It's great, actually. But the board members need to understand that you elect them, you put your faith and trust in them, and they need to at least understand your thoughts. Mr. Brow said that he is willing to listen, and he's chairman of the Board of Finance. So he's the chairman who funded that position that all of you are very concerned about, as am I. So you have the ear. How many other Amity board members are here? If you can just raise your hands just so everybody can see who the Amity board people are. And so, you know, you have some ears here. I don't know what the tenor is in Woodbridge and Bethany. I do not know what they're hearing, what they're saying, what they're thinking. But tonight was a good night. People actually got up and expressed true and open position. And that's extremely important for everybody here to hear. You know, I think that for too long, people have sat and been afraid to speak. I never get up and say how long I've lived here because it doesn't matter. If you moved in here 2 weeks ago, or if you've lived here, I will be 63 years. It doesn't matter because you are entitled to the same rights and benefits whether you're the newest person in the room or the oldest person in the room. We're going to be celebrating 200 years for this community over the course of the next few months. Orange, in its day, was a racist community, as many other places were. And as we evolve, things change. It takes time, but some things are appropriate and some aren't. Many of you don't know Marsh Hill, that corridor down there, was where they put all the Italians and Germans years ago. It was called Ragpickers Hill. Western Orange, over in the Derby Milford Road, Wheelers Farms Road area, was where they put all the Russian and Polish immigrants over there on the rock pile farms over there. People don't know that, but Orange was like that. Do you know why they had Italians working the docks down in New Orleans, 100 and some odd years ago, and then a bunch of them got hanged down there? Because if they put their slaves on a boat and they fell overboard and died, those people lost an asset. So they had little Italian dock workers who they put on the boats, because if they fell overboard and died, didn't matter, they got another one. So this is countrywide. And as we evolve, there will be changes. There will be things we like and things we don't like. But to say this is something new that all of a sudden us as parents and guardians and all this aren't capable of putting out there, and that the schools decided that they should do that instead of some better reading. And, I have trouble sometimes. We get young people come to work for us at the farm, can't do basic math, but they're learning about some of this stuff. So I see it. Just because I don't have children, I don't want you to think that I don't see it. I see it and I live it and I hear it on a daily basis. But you need to talk to those 4 that raised their hands, is your opportunity for tonight for sure. But as we said, Orange has done so many things, and I'm not going to go as long as I thought, but if you think about when I took office, some of the abandoned places, worn out places, somebody mentioned Firelight, Jim mentioned Firelight earlier, one whole part of it is now gone. They're going to be building some stores there, which I'm sure will be amenities for the people who live in the 72 apartments or whatever it is above them. I've had people scowl and be unhappy about those apartments. It is a challenge in some degree. But we're trying to be ahead of the curve, and that's why I want to explain that a little bit. You may not think it's a good thing, but it is a good thing, because some of you out there are going to have children and or parents or yourselves that don't need a big house, or your kids can't afford to buy a house yet, or your parents want to sell their house and downsize, and that apartment may work for them. The gyroscope development on Smith Farm Road, is it a perfect fit? Not everybody's happy with it. I've heard from some friends that, aren't happy about it, but it's 42, 44 units it's an affordable. Do you know what affordable is for Orange? It's not like it's $20,000. It's like a household income of $65,000 and $85,000 for a lot of those units in there. We're ahead of the curve. We are at like 1.09% of the 10% magic number of offering different types of housing, moderate and low-income housing in our town. That's a number that's been around for years. It's gone from 1.01 to 1.09. Woodbridge is in a mess because they have nothing. And now they're talking about taking their 150-acre golf course and selling 100 acres of it for moderate and low-income housing so that they can meet some of their quota to allay their lawsuit that's coming against them from 4 lawyers that are trying to push it. And if it goes to Woodbridge, it'll go to other towns. We were listed as a town that didn't offer much in that type of housing. So there's reasons for some of the things we do, and you need to find an appropriate spot and a right fit before somebody just jams it to you. And that's kind of what it is. And while not everybody's happy with that, it's what makes the fabric of the community. Are we a farming community like we were when I was a kid? No. Do we still have some farmers in the community? Yeah, we do, and we have a lot of great businesses. The trailer park is now under contract for a new medical building, a 2-story medical building situation going there. It's going to generate a lot more tax revenue than what is there, but it has offered home and respite to a lot of people for a lot of years that lived in those trailer homes there and all, when the post road was the big commuter road long before 95 went in. That was the main thoroughfare through. You know, the worn-out building that's right where you get off of, Mr. Leahy doesn't even have these because they happened after he and I had met, and then he went away for 2 weeks, and I've been really busy the last couple of days. Where you get off exit 41 coming from Milford, when you're sitting there at the end of the ramp, Marshall Road's right in front of you, the building on your right there used to be an engineering building and stuff. Now it's a wholesale florist warehouse and a fence supply place. That's going to be, it's under negotiations and all that. Well, the price is set. They have to go to zoning and all. That's all going to come down, and that will be a gas and convenience. It will pay a lot more and be a lot cleaner site than what you have there. For an entry to Orange, I think it'll look a lot brighter and cleaner than what you currently have there. But what's there served people and families and business for a lot of years. And, you know, people were able to make a living there. Well, now times have changed. And we get a lot of spots like that. And, you know, remember when Bertucci's bailed out? They left Mr. Rigione holding the bag on over $1 million in debts of many kinds, rents and sewer fees and taxes, all kinds of stuff. And he took a long time before he finally got Mission to agree to build out in half of it. And now, you heard me say earlier, Haven Hot Chicken and the sub shop are coming into 2 spots, or supposed to be coming into the other 2 spots in that building. It was, what was that? It was a fish place. Long John Silver, John says. I remember when there was a Hess gas station there, when I used to cut lawns on Pine Tree Drive, I'd push the lawnmower down Pine Tree Drive and buying gas for a quarter, what I'd give for those days again. But these are the things. There you go. But, you know, Aurora Products up on Marsh Hill, they're maxing out their building, 180,000 square feet. They're the largest user of dried cranberries in the country other than Ocean Spray Cranberry. They're right here in Orange. Many people don't even know that. That company is there. The VA building, people thought it was tax exempt. It's not tax exempt because it's a building built by private investors that is leased to the VA. So, I mean, we have done a lot of things. We've revamped a lot of buildings. He talked about the U-Haul building. Remember when it was the perpetual Halloween store? They'd paint it orange and put those crappy banners up and everything there. That used to drive me crazy. The TD Bank building, there's people fighting for that, and zoning has a moratorium on that at this moment, but there's people fighting for that for a store that sells cannabis products. So you say, well, that's not too good. We really don't want that here. Well, you got to think about it. I'm not a user of any of that stuff, but many are. But potentially, the way it's been told to us by 2 of the people who are trying to get in there, that could bring in approximately $900,000 to $1.1 million in revenue per year. Would be the town of Orange's share.
Yes.
From that, it's absolutely obscene. So no wonder why all those people were walking around yesterday with the 420 day with their smiles on, you know, but it'll be a smile for me with an extra $1 million. That'll affect your taxes there. But I mean, so we have people looking at lots and lots of things. We still have economic development going on. We're trying to do more to fix some of our schools and other buildings and Wolf Park and all these things that are going on. But I thank all of you for your hard work, and I thank all of you for coming, and those of you who volunteer. And I'll probably have about 7. I feel my phone keeps vibrating, so I know I got about 37 messages on it from people watching. But my last thing, and I promise last thing I'm concerned with, Hartford and this car tax thing, where they want to balance it out so everybody pays the same mill rate, and then the state is going to send us the difference. How long do you think how many years do you think they're going to keep sending us the difference? They're not gonna. And then, where do we go for it? Right here. That's where it's going to be, because they're going to take it out from your grand list, and then, once you don't get that money, when they don't have it to reimburse you, you're going to have to hit people for more on property tax. If the balancing idea is good, But just because they pay 16 in Greenwich and 58 in Hartford, we can't help that. That's driven by where you live. If they wanted to help specific areas, would be a better way to do it than go across the entire state. Also, I did say my last thing, but just so you know, we were supposed to be doing reval right now for the October 1st grand list coming up. In negotiations with Martin Heft, who's one of the directors of Office of Policy and Management, Hartford needed to delay their reval. They wanted to delay their reval, so they were looking for some other people to hang on the hooks with them. So we signed up. So we delayed our reval, so hopefully some of this bubble will push past before our reval. So we'll be doing reval next year. So it puts it off, essentially the tax impacts of that for 2 years. So with that said, if you have any questions for me, raise your hand and I can answer them while I'm standing there. All good.
Thanks, Jim.
Okay, let's see. So Kevin, you're the chairman of the Board of Finance, so are we at the end? Okay, so just a reminder for everybody in terms of the voting dates, you have heard them more than once, put them on your refrigerator. And if that's anything else, Kevin, it's up to you. Adjournment?
Nope, I think we've kept everyone long enough.
Okay, good. All right, thanks. And Chris and team.
Thank you all
said
for
they'd be
coming and
around for
commenting.
People to talk to them. I encourage everybody